He once sailed aboard the ship from letting himself be trapped and frozen by Arctic ice for 3 long years and endured a full winter hibernating inside a rough stone hut like a wild polar animal. Fridtjof Nansen, the legendary Norwegian explorer, conquered not only the frozen brutal wilderness of the far north but also broke down deep-rooted human prejudice and division. He created the famous Nansen passport, granting millions of displaced stateless people the basic right to be recognized as ordinary human beings. Once more tonight, wrapped in the profound silence of endless snow and ice, let us listen to the extraordinary life story of this Nobel Peace Prize laureate. If a person can keep a steady, clear mind through months of endless darkness in the frozen polar wilderness, their soul must possess unshakable inner resolve. Fridtjof Nansen was exactly such a remarkable man. His life split naturally into 2 profound halves, one belonging entirely to the pure desolate silence of the Arctic ice fields and the other devoted to healing the broken, scarred world of war-torn humanity. He pursued scientific answers to the hidden mysteries of the North Pole while tirelessly exploring endless possibilities for global peace and human reconciliation. This journey leads you into profound quiet solitude, boundless compassion and inner calm, carrying you gently toward restful, peaceful dreams. Amid bitter temperatures dropping to 40 degrees below zero, Fridtjof Nansen and his companion endured an unforgettable winter confined within a simple rough stone shelter. It was never a desperate struggle for survival but a life of deep philosophical reflection, quiet contemplation and almost meditative stillness. The inner strength nurtured through long, lonely isolation later took shape as the Nansen passport, saving countless refugees across Europe and beyond. Tonight, accompanied by the soft, gentle glow of a flickering hearth fire, step into the authentic life of this polar explorer and revered saint of peace. Picture standing alone close to the North Pole, trapped in the thick, endless darkness of the polar night, surrounded by absolute silence stretching in every direction. With temperatures plummeting far below 40 degrees, 2 men huddle together inside a tiny underground hut built from piled stones and thick walrus skin, living exactly like hibernating polar bears. For an entire year, their only daily routine consisted of cooking simple seal meat to sustain life, spending the rest of their time sitting quietly beneath dim flickering oil lamps, sharing silent glances, reading quietly or sinking into thoughtful stillness. The name Fridtjof Nansen was once seen as a symbol of reckless suicidal exploration, yet as time passed it became a lifeline of hope for millions of homeless refugees. Tonight, accompanied by the softly flickering glow of the hearth fire, we walk fully into the untold life of this remarkable soul. Through this tranquil tale, meant only for quiet reflection, he was a strong, resilient survivor capable of enduring the coldest, loneliest corners of the globe, yet also a compassionate, wise elder, signing official Nansen passports for countless displaced people amid the smoke and chaos of war. His lifetime journey crossed both the pure, untouched frozen wilderness of the Arctic and the complex battleground of human conflict, prejudice and suffering. The peaceful willpower grown from his philosophical stillness in the polar wilderness remains one of the most touching, profound paradoxes in human history. Now slow your breath to the quiet rhythm of the night outside and journey with us toward the eternal silent ice fields of the far north. The turning point of Nansen's story arrived in 1893 along the docks of Oslo, where crowds gathered to bid farewell to what most people considered an utterly reckless suicidal plan. While nearly all fellow explorers struggled desperately to avoid dangerous shifting ice floes and deadly frozen cracks, Fridtjof Nansen designed a uniquely round-hulled vessel, choosing to sail directly into the Arctic ice and allow himself to become trapped, frozen in place. He named his ship From, firmly believing that by drifting naturally along ocean currents the surrounding ice would eventually carry them straight toward the North Pole. It was a quiet, patient game of endurance, pushing human perseverance to its absolute limit. Yet 3 long years slipped away and the ship's drifting movement proved far slower than all his careful calculations. Nansen wrote in his personal diary that in this remote, frozen wasteland time had lost all meaning. Only the slow, steady path of the stars proved they were still moving forward. This prolonged confinement, isolation and endless waiting gradually transformed Nansen's state of mind, shifting his identity from a determined conqueror of nature to a humble, thoughtful observer. He studied the delicate patterns of floating ice, watched the quiet breathing rhythms of resting seals and explored the vast, lonely silence hidden deep within his own heart. By 1895 he finally accepted that his ship would never reach the pole, making an even bolder decision to set out on foot with one loyal companion, 2 sleds and teams of sled dogs to race toward the northernmost point on foot. During one of the bravest overland journeys ever recorded in human history, Nansen and his loyal companion Johansen reached a latitude of 86 degrees 14 minutes north. Though they never actually stepped fully upon the exact North Pole, they pushed human exploration farther north than anyone had ever ventured before. The journey back stretched into endless despair and hardship, and as another brutal polar winter descended, they were forced to stop and take shelter among the remote Desolate Franz Josef Land Archipelago. Instead of giving in to despair, they used their hunting knives to dig through frozen ground, gather heavy scattered rocks, and build a narrow stone hut barely large enough to shelter their bodies. What followed was their legendary winter spent in polar hibernation. They rarely bathed, their skin darkened by constant smoke from dim oil lamps, their clothes soaked through with thick seal oil, making them resemble strange, primitive sea creatures wandering the ice. Yet amid such extreme simplicity and harsh living conditions, Nansen displayed astonishing mental discipline and inner calm. Inside the cramped stone hut he wrote heartfelt letters to his wife, composed outlines for his great works on ocean physics, and calmly told stories of springtime in his Norwegian homeland to lift his companion's spirits through moments of low spirits. This ability to maintain human dignity, clear thinking, and inner peace, even in the darkest, hopeless corners of the wilderness, became the spiritual foundation guiding him through future international crises. He realized once all social labels, material possessions, and worldly attachments were stripped away, only the purest, sincere respect for life itself remained within the human soul. When Fridtjof Nansen finally survived against overwhelming odds and returned safely to Norway, he was welcomed home as a world-famous heroic explorer. Yet he never grew complacent or satisfied with public fame. The outbreak of the First World War pulled this quiet lover of Arctic solitude abruptly onto the loud, chaotic international stage. During the 1920s, millions of war refugees across Europe lost their official nationality, stranded as stateless, invisible people, rejected, turned away, and unwanted by every nation. Fridtjof Nansen stood before the Assembly of the League of Nations, his features still sharp and stern like Arctic glaciers, yet his eyes burning with warm compassion and kindness. He understood deeply that these stateless, forgotten people were just like himself, trapped in lonely isolation, forced into a cold political hibernation with no safe home to turn to, and always vulnerable to hardship and death. He put forward a groundbreaking proposal that shocked the entire world, calling for an international official identity document to be issued to all stateless refugees, later known forever as the Nansen Passport. This simple document was far more than just a piece of paper. It stood as the first international legal instrument crossing national borders to recognize the basic right of every individual to live safely with official recognition. Renowned artists, musicians, and thinkers, including Stravinsky, Chagall, and Rachmaninoff, all held Nansen passports, rebuilding their lives under his protection and advocacy. Nansen traveled tirelessly, negotiating with government leaders across every nation, drawing upon the unyielding perseverance forged during his Arctic expeditions to break through rigid, stubborn bureaucratic barriers. He often said, helping people in need requires no complicated political reasons. We are first and foremost human beings, only afterward Norwegian, French, or Russian. Throughout his entire life, Nansen fought against different forms of bitter cold, at first the freezing harshness of the natural Arctic wilderness, and later the cold indifference, prejudice, and cruelty within human society. While serving as a leading international relief official, he traveled directly to the front lines of the devastating Russian famine, witnessing scenes of suffering and starvation far more heartbreaking than any ice storm he had ever endured in the polar wilderness. Still, he refused to step back or look away. Using his own reputation and influence as collateral, he raised massive amounts of financial aid and tons of grain supplies to feed starving families and children. Even as many politicians tried to block his efforts out of ideological bias, Nansen offered one simple, unanswerable moral truth: shall we stand by silently and watch millions of innocent children starve to death simply because we disagree with their government? This profound humanitarian spirit, rising above political conflict, focused purely on protecting human life, earned him the Nobel Peace Prize in 1922. He donated the entirety of his prize money directly to refugee camps, returning quietly to his laboratory afterward to continue his beloved research in oceanography. He never saw himself as performing extraordinary miracles, simply extending the same explorer's code of never abandoning a companion in the Arctic to embrace all humanity. For Nansen, peace was never some distant, lofty ideal. It was practical, warm kindness, supporting one another through dark, desperate times. On a quiet afternoon in 1930, Fridtjof Nansen sat peacefully on his balcony overlooking the fjords of Oslo, closing his eyes forever in gentle calm. Outside his window stretched the clear blue waters of the Norwegian fjord, and far beyond lay the snow-covered, ice-filled wilderness he had loved deeply all his life. Nansen left behind far more than just the Nansen Passport and groundbreaking scientific data on polar exploration and ocean currents. He gifted humanity a timeless attitude toward life. Even trapped in the longest, darkest night, one can guard the inner flame of hope through self-reflection, discipline, and quiet resolve. He proved a strong, unyielding will and a gentle, compassionate heart can perfectly coexist within one soul. Our quiet story draws to a close tonight. May this saint of peace from the frozen ice fields lead you into a dream pure, vast, and filled with serene tranquility. Let go of the noise and chaos of daily life, and drift into a snow-covered world filled With endless starlight and lasting calm, may you find your own inner peace nestled within Nansen's quiet timeless stillness. Good night and warm peaceful dreams.